As the Mariners' offseason approaches, they have an obvious big free agent decision. Josh Naylor is a free agent. And I think, against all odds, when the Mariners traded for Josh Naylor, I don't think anyone expected that Josh Naylor would become the top target in the offseason. Eugenio Suarez was one of the league's leaders in home runs. He was a vibes guy. He's someone everyone in Seattle seemed to love. Josh Naylor played better than him, frankly. He hit better in Seattle. Eugenio Suarez struggled in his return to Seattle. So the Mariners have 5 likely free agents that they're going to have to worry about. We talked about Josh Naylor in the previous video. Go check that out if you haven't yet. On this video, I want to talk about the 2 of those 5 that I think the Mariners may actually be interested in re-signing. By the way, the other 2 guys that I don't think they'll have any interest in re-signing, and we're not going to devote almost any time to them in this video, are Mitch Garver and Caleb Ferguson. Ferguson was fine. He's a generic left-handed reliever. There's nothing exciting about Caleb Ferguson. Nothing particularly bad about Caleb Ferguson. He doesn't strike out a lot of batters. He was organizational depth when they needed a lefty. That's it. He struggled in the postseason. They didn't give up a lot for him. I don't think that the Mariners are going to make an effort, a strong effort, to keep Caleb Ferguson. I will say I am a little worried, based on the way that they used Mitch Garver in the postseason, that the Mariners may have more interest in keeping Mitch Garver than they should. To me, the way Mitch Garver has played since becoming a Mariner, that is a non-roster invitee, minor league contract only. 0 guaranteed money for Mitch Garver from me if I'm the 2026 Mariners. I'm no year's Mariners, but if it was up to me, there's better backup catchers out there. Defensively, he's a liability at the plate. The fact that the Mariners DH'd him multiple times and pinch hit him multiple times in the postseason, I think was actually, frankly, an indictment of the philosophy of Dan Wilson. And I'm telling you, I'm willing to put up with, I think there's something squishy about Dan Wilson that's been successful, that I can't measure, that's tough to measure. I think Scott Service, frankly, was a better game day tactical manager, but you can't argue with results. Dan Wilson has gotten better results out of these guys. Is it something he's doing? Is it luck? I don't know. But right now we're essentially a season and a half, or a little, a season and a month into this run of success that seems to have sustainable results. That being said, Mitch Garver, in my opinion, Mitch Garver's out. You may need to go get a different backup catcher. I'm not convinced that Harry Ford is a Major League Baseball catcher based on the scouting reports and the Mariners' reluctance to let him play catcher, especially in the postseason. But if there's no reason to put any effort into bringing Mitch Garver back unless it's on a non-guaranteed contract. I'm not giving him a 40-man roster spot right away. But the other 2 guys, Eugenio Suarez and Jorge Polanco, are a little more complicated because Gino, if you would have asked in late July when the Mariners traded for him right next to the deadline, should the Mariners extend Eugenio Suarez, I think most people would have been into it. He's a guy who, at the time, I believe he led the league in no doubt home runs, according to StatCast, meaning a guy who maybe would not be negatively affected by the negative effects of T-Mobile Park on offensive production. Then he came to Seattle, and he struggled mightily. He was slightly below average hitter in his stint in Seattle. He had the big grand slam in game 5 at T-Mobile Park, and we'll never forget it. It's arguably the biggest hit in the history of the Mariners. It's arguably the most important. I mean, it doesn't win a series like the Edgar Martinez double does, but it's in the ALCS. It brings the team back from the brink of elimination. It obviously the Raleigh home run that tied it before that really brings them back from the brink of elimination, and then this vaults them into the driver's seat in that series that they end up losing. Anyway, the Gino situation is more complicated. He's going into his age 34 season. When the Mariners traded for Eugenio Suarez originally, when they traded for him from Cincinnati, he was on a very team-friendly contract, but he was actually coming off of 2 pretty bad years. And he came with Jesse Winker, who might have even, my memory of the time Winker might have been the headliner of that deal. He was like a pretty respected prospect. I remember liking him a lot. His time in Seattle ended up being very infamous, and the Mariners, I think, got more out of Eugenio Suarez ultimately. And then they end up trading him for Carlos Vargas and Sebi Zavalis, which is like, or Zavala? Zavala, right? Anyway, they got functionally replacement level players. I mean, I think Sebi, you would say, is probably below replacement level, a guy who's never really stuck around the big leagues for the Mariners and played any meaningful innings. And, I mean, I've voiced my frustration with the way the Mariners used Carlos Vargas in the postseason. Vargas is a guy that there's tons of upside. If you throw 100 miles an hour and you have a 97 mile an hour cutter, no one's ever going to give up on you completely. And I don't understand. It boggles my mind that a guy can throw 100 miles an hour and have a 97 mile an hour cutter that has obvious movement. It's not just a cutter that spins and doesn't go anywhere. And guys just hit the shit out of him. I don't understand it. The point is they didn't get a lot for Gino then, and the trade was controversial. It was a pretty obvious salary dump, just a straight salary dump, not getting equal value for Gino, and Gino was a vibes guy, and it's possible. I'll have to go back and look, because my memory of it was that the Mariners weren't quite vibing with Gino the way that the organization wasn't vibing with him the way that his teammates were. And there was some frustration about Gino in the clubhouse. That's my memory. I could be wrong. I'll go back and look at it. I'm not going to correct it I mean, maybe I'll correct it in a future video, but I'm not going to edit it out of this video. A lot of fans were unhappy with the trade at the time. So bringing him back felt like a little bit of I think, validation for Gino, validation for those fans. It was a little bit of like exercising the demon of getting rid of him. And Jorge Polanco came to Seattle under... So one thing about Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez. Suarez has been here twice. Naylor's been here once. They didn't choose to come to Seattle. They were both traded to Seattle. Jorge Polanco, on the other hand, he was traded to Seattle, but then his contract expired, and he chose to sign in Seattle. He chose to stay in Seattle. So, and by the way, I mean, chose to stay is sometimes code for did not have much of a market elsewhere. I know that the Mariners front office has liked Jorge Polanco for a long time, so they probably offered him the best deal, but there's something valuable or something instructive about a guy that chose to come to Seattle on his own volition. So, with that in mind, I don't know that means that anyone's given Seattle a discount. I talked about how I thought that the maximum contract I'd be comfortable with signing Josh Naylor to is 3 years, $60 million. I've heard a lot of stuff in recent days about how he's irreplaceable. There's nobody like Josh Naylor. It's going to be so difficult to replace him if the Mariners let him walk. And frankly, I disagree. I think that if you sign Jorge Polanco to play first base, his offensive output's going to be very similar, if not better, than what you get from Josh Naylor. Will his defense be as good? I don't know. But I don't think you have to pay for first base defense. First base defense is very inexpensive in baseball terms. Eugenio Suarez, if you put him at first base, which he plays a pretty good third base. I don't think there's a reason why you have to do that. But if you put him at at first base, does he give you the same offensive output as Josh Naylor? It's tough to say because we got to see a couple months of him really struggling coming over to the Mariners. Sub 100 WRC plus. It's actually I have it over here. Hold on. He had a 91 WRC plus in his stint with the Mariners. Still worth, by the way, 0.7 wins above replacement in 2 months of a season and a third of a season. Still provided a lot of value defensively, but struggled at the plate. Josh Naylor hit pretty well. That's one of the reasons why I think Mariners fans are a little more excited about Josh Naylor is if I was a betting man and you put these two guys in two neutral stadiums and I was like, who's going to be worth more in 2026? I'd probably pick Gino. But there's something to be said about the, whatever it is it the psychology of T-Mobile Park or whatever, that Gino struggled a bit in his final year in Seattle. And he's always been a guy, by the way, who's had a profile that terrifies you, that you do not think is going to age well. He strikes out a ton. He doesn't walk enough to justify the strikeouts. He's kind of an all-or-nothing swinger. And he's the kind of guy that you think, I have thought, when it falls apart, it's going to fall off of a cliff. But now he has a chance for what's probably going to be the last payday of his career, and I don't want the Mariners to be the ones that overpay for him either. And one of the reasons for that is that, so the Mariners' payroll guarantees for 2026 right now are about $155 million. Last year, 2025, their total payroll for the year was $164 million, both according to SpotTrack. Other websites may have different numbers, but that's the number at SpotTrack. It's not my responsibility to be budget conscious for the Mariners, but if we're going to talk about what the Mariners are going to do as opposed to what we would like them to do, would I love to see the Mariners spend $220 million, $250 million, and really commit to a winner? Absolutely, but they're not going to do that, I don't think. We have no indication that that's what the Mariners are becoming. In fact, they're in kind of a period of uncertainty where their regional sports network is crumbling, and they may be a team that has a little more payroll flexibility because they haven't gone crazy in recent years, but we don't know. We just don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a strike coming up. With the strike alone, I don't know that I want to see the Mariners spending past 2027 very heavily. So for Eugenio Suarez, I would say his market value, according to SpotTrack, is about $15 million a year for 2 years. That's their estimated contract value. I got to check my stupid phone. They're at 2 years, $15 million, or 2 years, $30 million total contract about. And I would be comfortable with that. We're going to talk more about kind of the plan for J.P. Crawford from my perspective. The Mariners have been bullish historically about keeping J.P. Crawford as their shortstop, when even at times when I thought that was detrimental to their near-term forecast. They might do that again, but I'll spoil it. We're going to talk about it later in the offseason. I don't think J.P. Crawford should be your starting shortstop in 2026. That's not me saying, be very clear, that is not me saying that I think J.P. Crawford should absolutely be off of this roster. I just don't know if shortstop is the spot for him anymore at this point in his career. So Gino's never chosen to come to Seattle. Josh Naylor never chose to come to Seattle. I think whether Gino wants to return or not, I don't know. Gino has been on a pretty team-friendly contract. He's got one chance to get a payday. I would not begrudge him if he chose to go to the highest bidder and gave no hometown discount. Same with Josh Naylor. Josh Naylor's hitting free agency for the first time, and he's a guy at a position that is not heavily compensated right now. Though I would like to see him back in Seattle for a reasonable contract, if someone's given him 4 years, I'm letting him walk. That's it for me. I'm letting Josh Naylor walk. Anything more than 3 years, $60 million, I'm letting him walk. But Jorge Polanco's a little bit different because, so Polanco's a switch hitter, which I will say, I had a conversation with a friend of mine about this. I don't value the concept of switch hitting more than the results of switch hitting. There's a lot of talk about Cal Raleigh being the guy, the only switch hitter to do this, whatever. And it's kind of like there's a novelty to it. I'm not denying that. But all I care about is the results. All I care about is that Cal Raleigh had one of the best offensive seasons, bar none, period, in the history of baseball. Certainly one of the best catcher offensive seasons ever, and played so many games. So I don't need to add the switch hitting thing. Jorge Polanco is a switch hitter. That's to his advantage and not his detriment. The only detriment that I've heard people say that makes any sense is he has to do extra batting practice, and that's more difficult, and he's got to watch film on two different sides of the ball. Whatever. That stuff impossible to measure. But if anything, being able to hit from being ambidextrous and being able to hit from both sides, that's to his advantage, not his detriment. It's almost it's more impressive in the way that like someone who can do like a trick shot in golf is impressive. But what's the most impressive is guys who shoot low scores. And that's the way I feel. And Jorge Polanco this year played very well. He mostly DH'd, which was disappointing, I will say. Start of the season, the plan seemed like it was going to be for him to be the third baseman. Ryan Bliss gets hurt, and Polanco still mostly DHs. And only batted from the left side for a while. There was some sort of injury thing going on. And when the Mariners traded for Jorge Polanco, I remember not being that worried about the injury. Because he had really only sustained one major injury in his career, and it had just, the recovery had spanned the end of one season and the beginning of another. But the way that his 2024 went, and then 2025, where he comes in and he's not really able to throw the ball well, and he's hitting poorly or can't hit from one side. It was just like, oh, are we doing this again? And he ends up being one of the league's better hitters, plays decent amount of second base, mostly DHs, played a couple games at third base. And I'll tell you, hold on, that was embarrassing. If this is on camera, I just tried to take a drink of my water. Lid closed. What are we doing, folks? Should I edit this out? Probably not. I'd like to see Jorge Polanco back. Of all the guys, of the four that I talked about, Garver out, Ferguson out, frankly, I'm probably letting Gino walk. Even at 2 years, $30 million, the way he played down the stretch, where it was just like, he had in Seattle, he had almost a 36% strikeout rate. And I'm not a guy I'm not one of these Mariners front office guys that loves contact hitters. That's not me. I'm okay with strikeouts in the pursuit of power. 36% is tough. It's tough to sustain. 91 WRC plus from a third baseman making $15 million a year. It's tough to sustain. It's tough to pay for. And going into his age 34 season. Polanco's a year younger by league age. I don't know what his actual, how many days or actual years he is younger. But he's a guy he didn't play first base this year, but he's played first base, second base, third base, shortstop, all with some regularity and level of experience. I don't have a lot of doubt that he would be able to figure out first base. And frankly, this year, he hit like a first baseman. I've seen a lot of resistance to the idea of Jorge Polanco becoming the Mariners' first baseman, and I understand that it's not a sexy and exciting name. But if you had a guy that was your first baseman / DH that could also be your backup second baseman, that could also be your backup third baseman, that could also, in an emergency, play a little bit of shortstop, that guy's got a lot more value to me than Josh Naylor, who's first base, DH. Is he good at first base defensively? Yeah, he's probably a little bit limited by his height and length. But yes, I think the numbers show that he's been a pretty good defensive first baseman. But you got, Polanco, 132 WRC plus. He struggled last year. I'll grant you that, but 132 WRC plus, 26 home runs, 229 isolated power. A guy that just did it again. A guy that just had a great season. In stretches, but had a great season. Market value for Jorge Polanco, according to SpotTrack, is about 3 years, $44 million. Again, I'm not comfortable with 3 years, $44 million. I'm also imagining, so the Mariners guarantees, and we'll talk about how the Mariners may be able to clear up some money, but do you want them to do that? The way they can clear up some money is by trading Luis Castillo. That's the easiest way to clear up money. We're going to talk about that later in the offseason. I think there's an argument for it. I'll spoil this part. I don't think there's as good of an argument against it. The only argument being, if nobody wants Luis Castillo, or if nobody wants to give up anything of value for Luis Castillo, I don't know if I don't know if you trade him just for the sake of trading him. I think he has value, and I don't think you necessarily have to just do a payroll cut. But if that's the case, if the Mariners, let's say the Mariners are going to run $170 million payroll, which would be a significant jump from their opening day payroll last year. You're talking Jorge Polanco might be it. $155 million does not include his player option, which I think is $6 million based on the amount of plate appearances he had. So call it $21 million in space on the hypothetical that the Mariners increase their payroll to $170 million. Would we like to see him increase it to more? Yes. Obviously, yes. We all would like that. Will they? Maybe, but history shows they probably won't. If Jorge Polanco is if the Mariners, because there's a lot of this talk about the Mariners running it back. Just run it back. Well, it's not that easy. Because Jorge Polanco, Josh Naylor, and Eugenio Suarez combined are probably going to cost like $50 million next year. So just to bring those guys back, to add nothing else, just to have the roster that you have this year 1 year older, but to have Eugenio Suarez for the full year, Josh Naylor for the full year, Jorge Polanco for the full year. You had him for the full year, but $50 million. That's with no Mitch Garver. Which, who cares? But it's with no Mitch Garver. And it's without Caleb Ferguson, who, again, these are not guys that provide a ton of value, but you do have to go find. You still probably need to find some bullpen depth. You still got to figure out who's going to be your backup catcher, if it's going to be Harry Ford. You have these guys coming up in the system. Ryan Bliss can be in the competition for second base or like that utility infielder spot. I have a lot of hope for Cole Young. I think Colt Emerson's going to be very good. I guess to me it just doesn't seem realistic to me that the Mariners are going to go out and spend $50 million extra dollars from where they're at now. It would be, whatever, like $45 million above their 2025 payroll. If that's the case, if we hear reports of that, change the calculus. But if I had to pick one of those guys, Naylor, at the price that I think he'll get, especially, by the way, as the reports come out that both New York teams, the Yankees and the Mets, might both be interested in Josh Naylor, you don't want to be in a bidding war for that guy, in my opinion. That's my genuine opinion. And I like him. I like the contributions he made. He won me over. I was not excited about Josh Naylor, and he won me over. That is true. That is an admission on my part. I was wrong. But I still don't think you want to go out and break the bank. I have a friend who's like, blank check, give him whatever he wants. Not me. I don't feel that way at all. And I don't feel that way about Gino, and I don't feel that way about Jorge Polanco. But if you were going to tell me on the contracts that I think they will sign, who do I think will be the most productive and the most valuable to their team? I think there's a very strong argument that it's Jorge Polanco. He's got positional versatility. He hits well. He does it in a way that's doesn't feel like it's going to fall off of a cliff. Gino, what's the strikeout rate you can sustain? He was below average at 36%. Is it 33% in modern Major League Baseball? And is a guy going into his age 34 season going to improve his strikeout rate or get worse? Josh Naylor has the same, or has a very interesting profile because he doesn't strike out very much. He doesn't walk a ton, and he hits for some power, but not like a ton of power. And he doesn't, on average, hit the ball hard. But he has the capacity to hit the ball hard. He's a very throwback type of first baseman, a very throwback type of batting profile, period. And I do think the Mariners could use some diversity in approach. So I'm not saying any of that stuff to be disparaging. I want Josh Naylor back at 3 years, $60 million max. I'd like Jorge Polanco back. I don't think I'd go 3 years on Jorge Polanco. I don't think I'd feel bad going 2 years on Eugenio Suarez. But if that's what those guys are going to get, that's what they're going to get. Coming up soon, we're going to have the Major League Baseball trade rumors, free agent list with predictions. And we'll look at that in depth because that'll be very instructive. All right. Thank you guys for listening to this. I got to get going. It's Halloween as I record this. I got to go get my children into costumes and get them out trick-or-treating. But thank you for watching this, and we'll keep talking about this Mariners offseason as it goes along.